I read that you described yourself as feeling like a weird kid growing up here in Leeds. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I always have felt, and I guess I always do feel like a little bit unusual or a sort of outsider. I don't really feel uncomfortable in that position anymore, but I guess I would always, when I was younger, notice the things that were different about me. You know, I was really skinny when I was a kid, so I was really underweight. So I was really conscious of just being like these arms and legs, and you know, I used to wear like several pairs of tights because my little legs are so skinny. And you know, I rode a bike to school, and then I also played the violin, which I'd balance on one handle of my bike. I also played hockey, field hockey, so I'd have that. So I'd be kind of like riding along, you know, and you know, I had a boyfriend, but I went to church as well. I guess I just felt a little bit, I don't know, just kind of different, and now I really embrace it. But
how did music come into your life?
Music came into my life, I guess, through my family and my home. You know, my parents really enjoyed playing music. My dad used to have a big record collection. You know, my parents had met through music, like on some dance floor somewhere in Leeds.
They met on a dance floor?
Yes, they met on a dance floor, and I mean, their relationship really speaks of what Leeds was like in the 70s. You know, my dad came from the Caribbean. There are lots of Caribbean kids here in Leeds, and lots of white working class kids too, and those communities really found each other, and they found each other in the youth clubs and, you know, in the nightclubs and on the dance floors.
When did you realize you had musical talent?
I really think school was a big place for nurturing music for me. I think all the children learnt to play recorder, and then I think if you were good at the recorder, you know, if you're shining at Three Blind Mice, I must have been, because then the teacher would say, you know, like, these following children stay behind, and then they'd say, right, there's some music lessons that you can access. Do you want to play, you know, flute or clarinet or cello or violin? I really wanted to play the cello, but we didn't have a car. So my mum was like, oh, what about the one you can carry? So I ended up playing the violin, and I really enjoyed that.
When did you go from playing the violin in school to realizing, oh, I have a voice too?
Well, I always loved singing, but I always felt so sad about my voice because it had all this texture, and I think the music that was celebrated at that time was kind of like Andrew Lloyd Webber, you know, musical theatre. So we had a lot of people, you know, in school, to be thought of as a good singer, you had to have a really clear voice, like no texture, and also be able to sing really high. So I felt at school, you know, I can't really fit in to this music. And then I guess I grew up in like the golden age of sort of R&B, you know, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. I remember my dad used to have a Mariah Carey album that had Vision of Love, which is such a great song. But I used to sing it and just think like, I just can't, you know, I can't get those notes, or I can't do these runs. And I would be like, oh, I just wish that I could sing, or there was a place for my singing, but there isn't really. Like, I like to sing, I like to make up little songs, but I don't have a precedent for my voice. And it was only when I encountered two artists, one was Billie Holiday and one was Kurt Cobain. I remember going to the newsagent, getting the Billie Holiday CD. I put it on, I was like, I'd never heard a voice like that before.
Because you saw a way that your voice could be appreciated.
Yeah, well, I saw that I would be kind of welcomed into that space. I just think in the early 90s, music was so sort of densely produced and so shiny and so perfect. You know, it was kind of like the peak of popular music in a way, until you get a band like Nirvana, and it's just like, here's a drums, here's a vocal, here's a bass, here's a guitar, and you can hear it, you know, if you can take it apart and you think, oh, you're allowed to do it like that? Like, that was I didn't know punk before, you know, that was me learning about punk, and me and my friends were into it, you know, and we had a lot to say. We were teenage girls, you know, we were a lot from similar kind of backgrounds, you know, our parents had got divorced, we, you know, felt on the margins, and
you felt on the margins?
Yeah, definitely.
Way?
I mean, I think sometimes just growing up in kind of like sweet kind of middle class suburbia and being, you know, having we don't have the car, or we don't have the phone, or your parents are divorced, or any of those little things that are kind of the signifiers of being a little bit different. I think as much as Leeds is a really ethnically diverse place, you can still feel different as a person who has, a black parent and a white parent.
Was race an issue growing up, or at any point?
I think that this city has been really amazing in terms of helping me to sort of find my identity. I think.
In what way?
Because I think, like, say when I was young, there was a term that was half caste. I don't know if you probably didn't have that term in America, but there was a really popular term here, and it meant that you had a black parent and a white parent. And so I didn't hear that term until I went to school, and I thought it was such a strange term, and I couldn't work out why it didn't sit well with me. Obviously, when you analyse it, no one wants to be thought of as half of something, and then the caste part has its own complications. But I think in a journey to sort of find terminology which made sense of how that I felt like a whole person, I really found that from Leeds. So I think like I found my tribe through just making friends, but certainly in music, that was really where I found this is a place where I belong.
In 2006, your first album is released, and it's a huge hit. Your first single is a hit.
Yeah.
Your second single is a hit.
Yeah, so that was amazing for me because I'd been in this band for so long, with my best friends, with my boyfriend, and we would like make these demo tapes and we would send them off to radio stations and hear nothing back. Or we did win 2 band competitions from Leeds, by the way.
Congratulations.
So we got to make our own CD. So that was great, but I didn't really think of how widely music can really connect if you have a team that's like, really sending it out to people, or the radios want to play it, or, TV shows want to put you on. So it was really new to me.
You start hearing from people, musicians you'd idolized.
Absolutely. I mean, there was this awareness of me, it was really amazing. Stevie Wonder called me, Prince came to one of our shows. Like, it was just all these. Mary J. Blige I met at that event, and she told me, that she had got into the record when she was in London. I thought, if these people are giving me this praise, then it is going to give me the kind of confidence and self-belief that, it's really helping to root me and make me think, well, Stevie thinks it's good. So, because of course there is also always criticism of artists, especially when you become like more well known, and I was like, Stevie likes it, like, this is good, I'm gonna just keep making this work.
Herbie Hancock becomes an important figure in your life too. You perform with Herbie Hancock for President Obama.
Yeah, I mean, all these people are people that I have known, in my life, in my home, and never thought I'd even get to meet, and to feel their approval and their love and their support, and then get to perform with these people, especially with Herbie. He was recording an album of Joni Mitchell songs, and he asked me to perform River. And I remember performing it with him at the BBC, and it was, he was playing, Wayne Shorter was playing as well, and I just was thinking, how did I, get in this room?
Is it a weight in some ways to have a song be that successful? Do you feel like you're chasing something that you got with that song?
I think when someone does really well, everyone wants you to kind of win in that particular way again. The music industry is really brutal. They really want you to be commercially successful.
How about you?
I mean,
commercial success must feel good.
Yeah, definitely. But it was funny with that first record, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is going to be, like, I had no idea that it was going to be successful in that way. We made it in a basement studio with no windows. So it wasn't like I went in with a certain kind of ambition. I just wanted to make the songs work.
Are there new pressures now?
There's definitely not new pressures now, but definitely with my third record, I felt a lot of pressure, and that wasn't really that helpful. I had songs that I loved, and I would kind of like present them, and they would love them too, but it was more like, oh, this isn't the single, this isn't the first single.
Hear, to acknowledge?
Oh, really hard. Yeah, really hard. And I think at that particular point, I stopped saying, how about this, precious thing, because I almost wouldn't finish a song, because I'd think, well, maybe it's probably not hooky enough, or it's probably not.
What's
well, I
that
can't
like
get
as
to it by,
what's
I
that
can't
like
get to the
as-
chorus by 30 seconds, so what's the point?
What's that like as an artist?
I think it's really limiting. Herbie Hancock said to me, take your time, do your thing, he was kind of like, don't feel pressure. He's probably seen this happen before.
You've talked about how the media called you boring, too plain in a way. Looking back, how do you process that?
I think the early 2000s were a really interesting time for music, and especially for women in music. I hope and feel that it's different now. But I think, being a young woman at that time in music, there's so much interest. Like, the male gaze was the whole gaze. It's like, how much are you playing to this kind of audience, this kind of hetero male audience, So I remember people apparently would call the label and say, are there any FHM style photos of Corinne? And FHM was For Him magazine. It was quite a popular magazine in England. But, sort of like raunchy, sexy kind of. The response I felt from certain corners of the press were like, you're not going to give us the sexy pictures. You're not going to fall out of a club drunk for us. You're not going to have your PR person call us when you're leaving a store with like the things that you've just got. I wasn't in that field.
How was that to be on the receiving end of?
I mean, I didn't mind so much because, like I said, Stevie was calling me, like Prince was coming to the show. So it was like, okay, these people would like me to dress a bit more sexy. That's not gonna, I've just been in a punk band for 5 years. I didn't pull me into that world, which I felt was good.
You were on top of the world, and then 2008 tragedy strikes. Take me to 2008, the death of Jason.
His unexpected death was obviously, it just was the end of that particular part of my life. It was a really transformative thing for me. It was obviously a huge loss for him because he was just starting out in his life. He was only 31 and he was a brilliant musician and, a very funny person, a very bright person. And it's hard to even know how to summarize it. It would be impossible to summarize, but if you think about the effect on me, it felt at that time to be the sort of end of my life. When I look back, I think that he was a person who really experienced big highs and big lows. And I think that sometimes people regulate their emotions by drinking or by all the other things that can keep you even. So I would feel for him when he would make choices that he would later regret. He was a bright person. And
did you worry about his drinking? Did you think it was potentially problematic?
I thought that it was more sort of hurting his heart,
Hurting his heart?
Yeah, well, just
physically?
Yeah, not physically, sort of emotionally. What happened to Jason is just, really an accident. And I think it's really easy to die, That's a thing. And even if you could just try one thing and you haven't tried it before, and that that could be it. So it wasn't like a pattern or any kind of thing like that. It's just kind of a one-off thing.
You were married here. How was it to be back in this space?
It's funny being in a place, I always think space-time's a real thing, right? So it's physically the same space, but we have moved forward so much in time. So I have so many layers of memory here. When I think of our wedding here, I can almost sort of see it in my mind,
Where were you?
I mean, I think our top table's where we are sitting right now, and I remember I had a little dress that my sister had paid for. It was a handmade dress. I was really young. I think I was like 21 or 22 when I got married. Which now, looking back on the fact that we were only able to have this brief marriage, it feels so lucky that we, chose to get married really young. And I remember he had a kilt because he's Scottish. And it was just beautiful. It was all our friends. We played a lot of music. We were young, we were happy, we were in love. It feels like a good memory.
How did you deal with your grief?
I say a thing that someone said to me in the hospital. She said, oh, grief is a long journey. We're all going to lose people, you know. If we're lucky to have a long life, we're just going to see like people just going, you know, through that door. And there's something really, you know, beautiful about knowing that. Sorry.
You still get emotional?
I think it's such a complex emotion because it's sort of like the sadness of losing someone, but also the awareness of how beautiful, you know, life is, and how it's a beautiful thing that everyone you know, you have that much time with them, you know.
It's interesting to me that the emotion still so many years later is still so raw. I guess that's grief.
Yes, yeah, I mean, grief is kind of circular. I am so sort of interested in the phenomenon of it. I also think that we don't talk about it enough, like we're ashamed or embarrassed. You know, I remember different people, you know, I've heard of married, you know, people who've been married a long time and then their partner dies, and you know, other couples feel awkward around this person, or they, you know, they don't like to invite them to dinner or whatever it would be. And I feel like, you know, if you're someone who's lost your partner, you know, part of you has achieved the thing that you set out to do when you were married, which is, you know, that's how all good marriages end, right? That's what I always say to people. If you have a great marriage, that's how it's going to finish, right? One person's will pass away and the other person will stay, so.
Death do us part.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you realized life, or do you remember the point where you realized, okay, life is not over?
Yes, I remember being in New York. I can't remember why I was there, and I remember sitting in a cafe and I saw a woman come in with her little toddler, and she was pregnant, and they were kind of, I don't know, choosing a cake or something. I remember thinking like, oh, I would love to like have more life, you know. I'd love to, I guess I was thinking of like, I would love to be a parent, I would love to be in love, like that. And just being able to kind of leap to the future like that was a new, really new emotion for me. So I remember being able to leap to the future in that moment and think, I'd love to have that.
How was it to fall in love again?
It was like a brand new thing, but also, you know, the familiar thing of the excitement, the sense of safety. But I also think being, say, early 30s instead of early 20s is probably a different thing. You know, I'm sure people can relate to that. I felt like, oh, here's this person and he's so like kind, and he's really brilliant, and I just felt really drawn to him. And also that thing of like the thinking about the future, I was like, oh, could this be a thing, you know, that we
future
that we
kids
do? Yeah, I mean, definitely. So then I felt really lucky in my sort of late 30s to have my first child, and again that felt like such a blessing for me because I had been a widow when I was 29 years old, so I hadn't imagined that these things could happen for me, just because of the sort of timing of how it is, you know, in women's lives and women's bodies. So to be, you know, having a baby in my late 30s and another one in my early 40s, I was like, oh, this feels like an absolute meeting my husband and finding this love. It was like having a second chance.
You're going back on tour with your kids in tow. How different is that as a mom? Do you know? You like traveling with your kids? I
really like traveling with my kids, and I've done it since our eldest daughter was 4 months old. It just sort of worked. And as I've gone on in time, I've just seen, and before I got pregnant, I saw a few women doing this thing. So I was on tour with Norah Jones, and she had 2 young children with her, and her husband was also in the band. And I thought, oh, that's how you do it. You know, you have someone help you out, like it can be a family friend or a nanny or, you know, your mother if you're really lucky. But you just can do it, you know, because the public facing part of it, like the interview or the sound check or the show is one thing, but, you know, then there's 20 more hours in the day. I really want to be with my kids, you know. I don't want the memory of their childhood to be, mummy was never there. So now it's more like, okay, let's go, let's all go. So, you know, as a woman, you don't have to kind of end your career when you have your children. You just kind of like make it work.
20 years from now, do you think you'll be singing
Gosh,
your
I really
records
hope
on?
so. I mean, oh, do you think I'll be singing Put Your Records On? Yeah, I really, really hope I'll be singing Put Your Records On and some other songs. And I hope I'll have, 20 more. First of all, I hope I'm alive, but, I hope I'll have 20 more years of songwriting and of experience. And I think if you get to live a long life, it's such a lucky thing. And I think if you're an artist, there's so much of life to draw on. There's so many new experiences. There's so many observations. I think that's one of the great things about aging. It's like just the time that you get and the sort of perspective you get. I feel like we don't really talk about age so much. And of course, all the people talk about how you look when you get older, but nobody talks about how great it is to have just done loads of things and know loads of stuff and have experience and, like, memories that live in your body that can just fill up your, fill your cup so much. So that's one of the great things, the privileges of getting older, I think.
And then being able to sing about it.
And being able to sing about it too.